You also sit on the House Natural Resources Committee, and you've gotten quite a few bills through that committee that are tied to local issues. Do you want to talk about some of those?
Absolutely. There are many, many pieces of legislation that we've seen come through the Natural Resources Committee in this Congress, and I'm excited about every single one of them. In the Natural Resources Committee, I have already passed through committee the Trust the Science Act, and this is in regards to delisting the gray wolf as an endangered species federally. There are pieces of it that could help us here in Colorado, but the way that state ballot initiative was worded and the way the governor vetoed the FJ10 ruling with the wolves, it's going to be really, really difficult for us to put a stop to the wolf introduction here in Western Colorado. My legislation, this Trust the Science Act, proves that the gray wolf has been recovered. And since it is recovered, it no longer needs to be on the endangered species list. So boebert.house.gov, you could read about this legislation, but I have 3 bills that are related to our water. Anytime somebody asks me what are my top issues in the district, I say, well, my top 3 are water, water, water. That is the lifeblood of Western Colorado and of the West, and it's alarming and concerning when we have these over-allocation problems, when we see states like California dumping hundreds of billions of gallons of water into the ocean because they refuse to store it. There are bipartisan pieces of legislation that I've been working on that help our water resiliency. We don't have a lack of water here in the West. We have an over-allocation problem. But also, I will soon be introducing my forestry legislation, reintroducing that. I'm working on that to improve it from the last time I introduced it. This bill is built from the district up. We have traveled all throughout the district hearing from folks who are forestry experts, local stakeholders, from Parks and Wildlife, from Forest Service agencies, all over this, all over we've heard from folks. And if we don't have healthy forests, then we don't have healthy watersheds. We had the beetle kill infestation, this pandemic that came through and devastated a lot of our pine. And we weren't able to manage that forest when that was taking place because of the wilderness designations that are in these forest areas. And so now it's just this massive tinderbox waiting to ignite. And we wonder why we've had more wildfires in the past 20 years. Well, what happened 20 years ago? Bark beetle. So we have to be able to manage our forests to have that strong watershed, water resiliency, and then I'm happy to be working on these water projects as well.
Last cycle was the closest congressional race in the country. This cycle already, the dark money's coming in, spent almost $1 million attacking you. What's your outlook on the campaign?
Has it been $1 million already? It doesn't even feel like $1 million anymore. I've had $6 million raining down on me in the past. So yes, we had a very tight race the last time. There's probably many things that we can point to. We had Governor Polis and Senator Bennett at the top of the ticket, spending tens of millions of dollars, and unfortunately there was a blue wave that went with that. We had 50,000 Republicans not vote in our district, and this campaign cycle, we have got to make sure that that does not happen. 50,000 Republicans had a ballot mailed to their house and either filled it out and left it on the counter or never acknowledged it at all. And so we have to make sure that we are out there collecting those ballots in one way or another. I want us to have the strongest ballot harvesting, ballot collecting initiative in the state of Colorado this election cycle.
So we're going to transition from God to the DC and the swamp.
Praise the Lord.
The year started off with a fight over
Yes.
the speaker's nomination. I was with my popcorn watching play-by-play on the news. You were at the center of it. Tell us why you took the action you did and what's come of it.
Yes, so that was a very interesting time in Washington, D.C. So actually, the speaker's race debate started in the summer of 2022. And we started having negotiations with then Leader McCarthy about what we wanted the majority to look like. We all expected to have the majority, but we did not expect a 5-seat majority. We were expecting this big, massive red wave, and say whatever you want about that, we didn't get it. And so all of these negotiations started behind closed doors with Kevin then, and then when we saw what this race, what the outcome actually looked like, and it was such a slim majority, we got a little more aggressive in what we wanted this to look like, because it was sounding very much like the status quo, like the establishment was going to come in and continue to do things as usual in Washington. So there were many weeks of conversations, both with my colleagues in the Freedom Caucus and then with the speaker, the soon-to-be speaker. And it was certainly interesting. We were going through a recount here with my race, but I was in it every single day, just like we were going to continue on, and dedicated my entire month of December to these meetings. But in that race, we made amazing strides, historic, fundamental changes, because we held our ground. A lot of you saw just 4 days of what was going on, and it seemed like this was out of nowhere, and we just wanted to cause a stir, create chaos and dysfunction. I'm a mom of 4 boys. I'm a previous restaurant owner. I know chaos. I know dysfunction. This was anything but that. It was actually the most productive I have seen Congress to date. We were all assembled on the House floor debating the topic at hand with our colleagues, and it was amazing to have that dialogue and have that exchange, and ultimately achieve the requests that we were working towards. My colleague Matt Gaetz and I were literally back to back at the end to make sure that we got everything that we had requested and demanded. And none of that was for self-gain. It wasn't for committee positions or gavels in our hands or some fancy title. It was for you. We wanted to make sure that each individual member of Congress was able to effectively represent their constituents. I had just served 2 years where I was very limited in the way that I could represent you. And the one thing that couldn't be limited was my mouth and my tweets. So I used both very aggressively to make sure that you knew exactly what I was fighting for, exactly what was going on in Washington. And in fact, because I was loud and aggressive when it counted, we were able to stop the Disinformation Governance Board that the Biden administration wanted to create to silence you. And so it still was effective, even though not everyone likes it. But I learned early on in Washington, nothing changes without force. If you are silent, we lose by default. And so you have got to speak up, and that includes you at home. I notice in DC, when you have a topic that you are passionate about and other representatives and senators are hearing you speak out, because they start talking about it there. If you're not talking about it, they think that it doesn't matter, and they do not have to address it. But in the speaker's race, sorry, a long answer to your question, we were able to accomplish amazing things. First of all, 72 hours to read a bill. In my previous Congress that I served in, we did not have that luxury. We would have multi-thousand-page bills that were multi-trillions of dollars of your money that was being spent, and we would have 22 hours to read a bill. Some of this legislation, I fought to get really great things for our district, for our state, and for the West included in those bills. But when you give us 22 hours to read 3,000 pages, there's no way in good conscience I could vote yes on that legislation. And so happy to fight to get the wins that are in there, but that's not the way we should be doing our jobs in Washington, D.C. I also fought for single subject legislation. We have 47 state legislatures that have single subject legislation. We should be able to mimic that on a federal level. Well, now we are.